Incoming. The word tears through USS Iowa like a knife. October 25th, 1944. Pacific Ocean, 1,500 miles from the Philippines. Seaman David Brennan stands inside turret 2, 78 feet above the waterline. He is 19 years old. His hands grip the shell hoist controls. Red combat lighting turns everything the color of blood. Around him, 110 men scramble to battle stations. The radar report crackles through the intercom. Japanese heavy units range 32,000 yards, closing fast. David looks up at the shell waiting in the hoist. 2,700 pounds of steel, polished to a mirror shine. The most powerful armor-piercing projectile the United States Navy has ever built. His throat tightens. He knows something the officers do not know. Something the other men in this turret do not know. Something that could kill every man aboard this ship. This armor cannot stop these shells. Not at close range. Not if the enemy closes to 20,000 yards. Not if Admiral Kurita, aboard the Japanese super battleship, turns towards them instead of away. David has known this for 2 years, since he was 17, since he worked the forge at Bethlehem Steel and did the mathematics no one wanted to hear. The turret vibrates as the massive barbette rotates. Hydraulics whine. The 3 16-inch gun barrels elevate toward the horizon, waiting for the fire command that could start the battle David has been dreading since the day he enlisted. This is the story of how a 19-year-old factory worker's son discovered America's newest battleships had a fatal flaw, how he tried to warn the Navy, how they laughed at him, and how 8 months later, that flaw almost killed 1,800 men. But the story does not begin here. Not in this turret, not in October 1944 with enemy battleships on the horizon. It begins 18 months earlier, November 1942. Bethlehem Steel Corporation, Lackawanna, New York. David Brennan is 17 years old. He is not a sailor yet, not even close. He is a machinist apprentice at the Armor Plate Division, 6 weeks into his first job, learning metalwork from men who have spent their entire lives in the forges. His assignment is simple: quality inspection assistant. Examine armor plates before they ship to the Navy. Look for cracks. Measure hardness. Stamp the certification if the plate meets specification. It is November 14th, a cold Saturday morning. The inspection bay smells like oil and metal shavings. David leans over a massive steel plate, 12.1 inches thick, wider than a car, heavier than an elephant. This plate will protect USS Iowa, the Navy's newest, fastest battleship. Men will trust their lives to this steel. David peers through the magnification lens. The surface looks perfect, smooth, hardened to 700 Brunel, harder than anything else made by American industry. But at the boundary between the super hard face and the softer backing, David sees something: hairline cracks, microscopic, barely visible even at 40 times magnification, micro cracks in the cementation layer. He flags the supervisor, not his father. Tommy Brennan works a different shift. This supervisor is Bill Henderson, 30 years experience, face like worn leather, permanent scowl. David points to the cracks. Henderson leans in, squints, straightens up. Meets specification, Henderson says. His voice is flat, final. Sir, these cracks, David begins, within tolerance. Stamp it. But if a shell hits this exact spot at the right angle, Henderson turns, stares at David, the kid with 6 weeks experience, the boss's son who thinks he knows better. Kid, you got 6 weeks, I got 20 years. The Navy has specifications for a reason. This plate meets every single one. You gonna tell me the specifications are wrong? David opens his mouth, closes it. Stamp the plate, Brennan. David stamps it. But that night alone in the boarding house room he rents for $8 a week, David opens a notebook, writes in careful print, plate 147B, micro cracks at cementation boundary, meets specification but marginal, November 14th, 1942. He does not know yet that this plate will be installed in the barbette protecting turret 2. He does not know he will serve inside that turret. He does not know that 47 years later, the same plate will be examined by investigators trying to understand why 47 men died. All he knows is simple mathematics. and the mathematics are starting to trouble him. David Brennan was born in Lackawanna, New York in 1925, the year the Washington Naval Treaty strangled battleship construction and put thousands of steel workers out of jobs. His father, Tommy Brennan, kept his position at Bethlehem Steel. Barely. The armor forges went cold for 13 years. Tommy transferred to commercial steel. Girders for bridges, plates for buildings. Honest work, lower pay. David's mother died when he was 11. Tuberculosis. It took her in 6 months. Left Tommy raising a boy alone on a steelworker's wages during the Depression. They lived in a company house 3 blocks from the plant. David grew up with the sound of trip hammers shaking the walls, the smell of coke smoke drifting through open windows, the red glow of furnaces lighting the night sky like a second sunset. Tommy took David to the plant on Saturdays sometimes. Let him watch the big presses, the hydraulics that could crush a car into a pancake, the overhead cranes lifting ingots that glowed orange with heat. Steel has memory, Tommy told him once. They were watching a forging operation, a 40-ton ingot being compressed under thousands of pounds of pressure. You heat it wrong, cool it wrong, the grain structure remembers. Years later, under stress, the steel remembers. And it fails. David was 13. He did not understand then. He understands now. By 1941, the armor forges were roaring again. Britain was fighting Germany. America was rearming. The Navy ordered 4 new battleships. Iowa class? The contracts brought Bethlehem Steel back to life. Tommy Brennan became armor forge supervisor, teaching the next generation the art his generation had perfected 20 years earlier. How to cement the face of a plate, how to quench it, how to temper it so the surface was hard as diamond and the backing tough as railroad rail. David quit school at 17, not because Tommy wanted him to, because the war was coming and boys were needed. Tommy got him the apprentice position, taught him at home what the forge is taught during the day: mathematics, chemistry, metallurgy. You see these numbers? Tommy spread the specifications across their kitchen table one evening. December 1941. Pearl Harbor was 3 weeks behind them. America was at war. The specifications showed armor thickness, 12.1 inches, mounted at 19 degrees from vertical. That angle gave an effective thickness of 13.5 inches against shells coming in on a flat trajectory. What shells? David asked. 16-inch guns, 2,240-pound armor-piercing shells. The armor stops them at 18,000 to 30,000 yards. David did the geometry in his head. At 18,000 yards, the shell would be falling at a steep angle. At 30,000 yards, nearly vertical. The sloped armor would deflect or absorb the impact. What if the shells are heavier? David asked. Tommy paused, looked at his son. They are not. But what if they are? Tommy did not answer. Not then. But David saw something in his father's eyes. A flicker of the same question. 3 days later, David is on the factory floor, monitoring a cementation furnace. The process takes 3 weeks. Armor plates buried in powdered bone char. Carbon slowly diffusing into the steel face. Temperature held within 10 degrees Fahrenheit or the entire batch is ruined. David checks the pyrometer. 1,505 degrees. Perfect. 2 engineers walk past. They do not notice the apprentice. Apprentices are furniture. Invisible. Bureau of Ordnance finally approved the Mark 8, one engineer says. His voice carries in the cavernous forge building. About time. The longer barrel needs the heavier shell to maximize velocity. 2,700 pounds, 460 pounds heavier than the Mark 5. Penetration characteristics are impressive. They walk on, discussing technical details David cannot quite hear, but he heard enough. 2,700 pounds. David's hands go still on the furnace controls. He does mental math, quick, rough. The kind of calculation you can do if you have spent months reviewing armor specifications at your kitchen table. 2,240-pound shell. 18 inches of penetration at 20,000 yards against vertical armor. 2,700-pound shell. Same velocity. Probably higher because of the longer barrel. Call it 20 inches of penetration, maybe 22. Iowa's belt armor, 12.1 inches. Sloped at 19 degrees. Effective thickness, 13.5 inches. 22 is bigger than 13.5. David's stomach goes cold. He finishes his shift, says nothing, goes home, pulls out the specifications Tommy brought home, does the mathematics properly this time, with tables, with ballistic coefficients, with angle of impact calculations. The answer does not change. If the Iowa-class battleships fire the new Mark 8 Super Heavy shells, those shells can penetrate the Iowa-class armor at battle ranges. The ship cannot stop its own weapon. David sits at the kitchen table until 2 in the morning, checking his work, looking for errors, finding none. The next day he approaches one of the senior engineers, carefully, respectfully. "Sir, I overheard something yesterday about the Mark 8 shell." The engineer glances at him. "What about it?" "It is heavier than the Mark 5, 2,700 pounds instead of 2,240. "Correct. Better penetration." "Sir, if penetration is better, does that mean the armor specifications?" The engineer's expression hardens. Sun armor specifications were finalized 2 years ago. Bureau of Construction and Repair. Gun ammunition is Bureau of Ordnance. Separate departments. Different contracts. Not our concern. But should not someone what? Tell the Navy they built 4 battleships wrong, that every armor plate we have delivered for 2 years is inadequate. The engineer steps closer, lowers his voice. "You gonna do that, kid? You gonna write a letter to Washington telling admirals and naval architects they made a mistake when you got 6 weeks experience checking furnace temperatures?" David says nothing. "Thought so. Get back to work." David gets back to work. But that night in his boarding house room, he writes a letter anyway. The letter takes David 3 hours to write. He drafts it 4 times, trying to sound respectful, knowledgeable but not arrogant, concerned but not panicked. The final version is 1 page, typed on a borrowed typewriter. "To the Bureau of Construction and Repair, United States Navy, Washington, District of Columbia. Sirs, my name is David Brennan. I am a machinist apprentice at Bethlehem Steel Corporation, Lackawanna, New York. I assist in quality inspection of armor plate for Iowa-class battleships. I have observed the armor specifications. 12.1 inches, Class A face hardened, mounted at 19 degrees. I understand this provides immunity against 16-inch 45 caliber shells firing 2,240-pound projectiles at ranges between 18,000 and 30,000 yards. I have learned that the 16-inch 50 caliber guns of the Iowa class will fire Mark 8 super heavy shells of 2,700 pounds. At 20,000 yards, these shells will have substantially greater penetration than the Mark 5 shells the armor was designed against. My calculations suggest the armor may not provide adequate protection at typical battle ranges. I respectfully request this matter be reviewed by appropriate authorities. Respectfully submitted, David Brennan, Machinist, Apprentice." He seals the envelope, addresses it, puts a 3-cent stamp in the corner. The letter sits on his desk for 2 days. On the 3rd day, his father finds it. Tommy Brennan stands in the doorway of David's room, holding the letter. His face is unreadable. "You cannot send this." David looks up from the book he is pretending to read. "Dad, the math is simple. The shells are heavier. They will penetrate. You think the Navy does not know? Then why are they building the ships?" Tommy sits on the edge of the narrow bed. He is 42 years old, 20 years in the steel industry. He has built armor for battleships in 2 different wars. He knows things his son is just discovering. They made a choice, David. Speed over armor. These ships need to make 33 knots. Chase down Japanese battleships. Escort carriers. To get that speed with the Panama Canal beam restriction, they cannot carry enough armor to stop everything. But the crews will never face enemy battleships at close range. That is what radar is for. That is what tactics are for. The ships engage at 30,000 yards, beyond the immunity zone problem. Fire control radar lets them shoot accurately when the enemy cannot even see them. What if something goes wrong? What if they get caught close range? Tommy is quiet for a long moment. Then speed saves them. 33 knots. Nothing the Japanese have can catch an Iowa in open water. That is not an answer. It is the only answer there is. Tommy holds up the letter. "You send this, you get me fired. You get yourself blacklisted. Every steel company in America will hear about the kid who questioned Navy specifications. You will never work in this industry again. Someone needs to know. Someone does know. The admirals know. The naval architects know. Every PhD metallurgist at Carnegie Steel knows. They chose to build the ships anyway because America needs fast battleships more than it needs perfect battleships. Because war is 6 months away and there is no time to redesign everything. Tommy's voice softens. David, you are 17. You did good work figuring this out. That shows you are smart. But smart is knowing when to speak and when to trust that the people making decisions have reasons you do not understand yet. David stares at the letter in his father's hands. Tommy stands, walks to the small trash can, holds the letter over it. Your choice, son. David watches the letter drop into the trash. But that night after Tommy leaves, David retrieves the letter, smooths it out, files it in his notebook with his calculations. He does not mail it, not yet, but he keeps it. February 1943, David Brennan turns 18. The draft notice comes 3 days later. Every able-bodied man between 18 and 26. Uncle Sam wants you. David could claim essential war industry deferment. Armor production is critical. Bethlehem Steel would support the deferment. He could stay in Lackawanna, safe, building armor for other men to trust their lives to. He enlists in the Navy instead. Tommy finds out when the recruiter's office calls to confirm employment history. Why the Navy? Tommy asked that night. They are in the kitchen, the same table where they studied armor specifications. Why not wait for the draft Army Air Corps, anything but the Navy? David does not answer directly. I need to see if I am right. Tommy understands immediately. His face goes pale. David, no. If the armor is adequate, I will be safe. If I am wrong about the vulnerability, then there is nothing to worry about. And if you are right, then I need to know. I need to see what happens. I cannot build this armor and never know if it works. You could die testing it. David meets his father's eyes. Men are dying every day trusting it. If it is going to fail, better to fail with me aboard than with men who never had a chance to know the truth. It is the logic of a teenager, brave and stupid in equal measure. Tommy knows he cannot argue with it, cannot forbid it. David is 18. The law says he is a man. They do not speak much over the next 2 weeks. David finishes his notice at Bethlehem Steel. Tommy watches his son pack a single duffel bag. Everything David owns fits in 40 pounds of canvas. The bus to Great Lakes Naval Training Station leaves at 6 in the morning. Tommy drives David to the station. They stand on the platform, February wind cutting through their coats. The armor will hold, Tommy says. I built it. I know what it can take. The armor will hold against what it was designed for, David says, but not against what it was not designed for. The bus arrives, brakes hissing, diesel smoke, bite damus. David picks up his duffel. Right when you can, Tommy says. David nods, climbs aboard. Through the window, he watches his father standing alone on the platform, a steelworker who built armor for battleships, watching his son go to sea on a ship protected by that armor, wondering if he sent his son to die behind steel he certified with his own hands. Great Lakes Naval Training Station, Illinois. March through May 1943. Boot camp is 12 weeks of controlled chaos. Marching, rifle drill, damage control, firefighting, navigation, Morse code, semaphore. 1,000 skills compressed into 3 months. David excels, high scores in mathematics, perfect marks in mechanical aptitude. The Navy needs smart kids for technical ratings. Gunnery, fire control, radar operation. David requests gunnery school. The instructors are surprised. Most smart kids want radar or sonar. Electronics, the future of naval warfare. Gunnery is old school, mechanical, brutal work in cramped spaces. But David needs to be in a turret, needs to see the armor from the inside, needs to understand what happens when shells hit. Gunnery school is 8 more weeks. Fire control theory, ballistics, hydraulics, the intricate machinery that loads shells weighing more than a car and fires them 20 miles. The instructors teach armor protection. You men will serve on the finest battleships ever built, the chief petty officer says. He is standing in front of a cutaway diagram of an Iowa-class turret. The armor protecting you is 12.1 inches of case-hardened steel on the belt, 19.7 inches on the turret face. Nothing the enemy has can penetrate it. David sits in the back row, silent, doing mathematics in his head. 19.7 inches on the turret face. Mark 8 shell, 2,700 pounds, 20,000 yards. Angle of impact matters. Shell condition matters. But the basic calculation is simple. At close range, a Mark 8 shell can penetrate 19.7 inches. The armor protects against old shells, old threats, old assumptions. But the enemy is not using old shells, and neither is the United States Navy. The instructor finishes his lecture. Any questions? David raises his hand. Yes, Brennan. Chief, what is the armor designed to stop? What specific shell weight and velocity? The chief consults his notes. 16-inch 45 caliber guns, Mark 5 shells, 2,240 pounds. The armor provides immunity at all battle ranges. What about Mark 8 shells? The 2,700-pound projectiles the Iowa class fires. The room goes quiet. The chief's expression does not change, but something flickers in his eyes. Recognition, or maybe warning. The armor is adequate for all anticipated threats, Brennan. Yes, Chief, but are we an anticipated threat to ourselves? A few students laugh, nervous laughter. The chief does not laugh. Seaman Brennan, the Navy does not design ships that cannot protect their own crews. If there was a problem, it would have been solved during construction. Understood. Understood, Chief. But David does not understand. He understands the mathematics. And the mathematics say the chief is wrong. Graduation from gunnery school, June 1943. Orders are posted. Assignments to the fleet. David reads his name on the board. USS Iowa BB-61, Turret Division 2. He stares at the posting. Of the 4 Iowa-class battleships under construction, he is being sent to the first, the name ship, the lead vessel. And of the 3 main turrets, he is being sent to Turret 2. The turret protected by barbette armor that includes plate 147B, the plate with micro cracks. The plate David inspected 9 months ago. He writes to his father that night. Dad, they are sending me to Iowa. Turret 2, the turret protected by the plates from batch 147. Remember the ones we certified together. I am going to serve inside the armor we made. If I am wrong about the vulnerability, I will be safe. If I am right, we will find out together. I love you. David. Tommy receives the letter in Lackawanna, reads it 3 times. Then he walks to the plant, finds the production records, looks up plate 147, shipped to New York Navy Yard, July 1941, installed in Iowa barbette structure. Turret 2, Tommy sits in the records office for an hour. His son will serve inside armor, Tommy approved. Armor with micro cracks Tommy knew about. Armor protecting against threats Tommy knows it cannot handle. He wants to write back. Wants to tell David to request a transfer. Any other ship, any other turret. But what could he say? The armor meets specifications. It is good steel. The best American industry can produce. It is just not perfect. And in war, imperfect armor still has to be good enough. Because perfect armor does not exist. Tommy writes back. 1 sentence. Trust the armor. Trust your training. Come home safe. David receives the letter at New York Navy Yard. August 1943. He is standing on the dock, looking up at USS Iowa for the first time. The ship is massive, 887 feet long, 10 stories tall, 45,000 tons of steel. The armor belt runs the length of the citadel, 12.1 inches, mounted at 19 degrees, painted haze gray, rivets like a line of soldiers. David reaches out, touches the armor. Cold, solid, thick. It feels invincible, but David knows better. He climbs the gangway, reports aboard, receives his bunk assignment, Turret Division 2, gun deck, Rack 47B, the same designation as the plate with cracks. David does not believe in omens, but he believes in mathematics, and the mathematics say that if this ship faces an enemy battleship at close range, the armor that feels invincible under his hand will not save him. Speed might save him. Tactics might save him. Luck might save him. But not the armor. Never the armor. He stows his gear, reports to his division, Meets the other men who will work turret 2. Most are older, 23, 25, some pushing 30, experienced sailors transferred from older ships. A few boot camp graduates like David. The turret captain is Chief Gunner's mate, William Porter. When David reports, Porter looks him up and down. "You are the kid from Bethlehem Steel, worked on armor production." David's pulse quickens. "Yes, Chief. Quality inspection." "Good. You understand the equipment. You know what keeps us safe." Porter gestures at the massive turret structure. "This steel, American steel, best in the world." David nods, says nothing. Porter continues, "Your station is Shell Deck 2. You guide projectiles from lower hoist to upper hoist. 2,700 pounds. You lose focus for 1 second, someone loses a foot." "Understood." "Understood, Chief." "Good. Welcome aboard, Brennan." David settles into his rack that night, lies in the darkness, listens to the ship. The ventilation fans, the generators humming, the sounds of 800 men living and working in a floating city of steel. Above him, Turret 2 looms silent, 17.3 inches of armor in the barbette, including Plate 147B, the plate he stamped 9 months ago knowing it had flaws. David closes his eyes. Tomorrow training begins, and he will learn how to load the shells that could kill him, while standing behind armor that cannot stop them. USS Iowa departs New York Navy Yard on August 27, 1943. Shakedown cruise. Chesapeake Bay, testing systems, training crew, working up to combat readiness. David Brennan stands inside Turret 2 for the first time as the ship gets underway. The interior is like standing inside a 3-story building made entirely of machinery. Overhead, the massive gun breeches dominate everything. Each breech assembly weighs more than a locomotive. 3 of them, side by side, cramped spacing. Below the guns, the working chamber, shell decks, powder handling rooms, hoists running down through 4 levels to the magazines deep in the ship's belly. 110 men work this turret, officers in the gunhouse, petty officers on the shell decks, seamen in the powder flats and magazines. David's station is Shell Deck 2. His job is to guide the 2,700-pound projectiles from the lower hoist to the upper hoist, then into the gun room where they will be rammed into the breeches. Training begins immediately. Porter runs drills relentlessly. Load simulation, move. The turret erupts into coordinated chaos. Hoists activate. Hydraulics whine. Practice shells rise from below. Each one painted bright orange so everyone knows it is inert. No explosive filler, no danger except the weight. David positions himself at the transfer point. The lower hoist brings the shell up, 2,700 pounds moving smoothly on mechanical rails. David guides it onto the upper hoist platform. Signals clear. The shell rises toward the gunroom. 30 seconds later, the powder hoist delivers 6 silk bags. Each bag contains 110 pounds of smokeless powder, 6 bags per gun. Enough explosive energy to throw 2,700 pounds of steel 23 miles. The drill continues. Load, simulate firing, extract the empty powder case. Load again. Porter times everything with a stopwatch. 2 minutes 18 seconds. Too slow. Battle rate is 2 rounds per minute per gun. Again. They drill until every man can perform his job blindfolded. Until muscle memory takes over. Until the turret operates like a single organism. David learns the sounds. The hydraulic pressure changes that signal the guns are elevating. The particular whine when the turret rotates. The click when the breech locks. The silence before firing. But the first live fire exercise is different. August 30th, 1943, Chesapeake Bay. Target sleeves towed by destroyers 20,000 yards distant. General quarters sounds. Real ammunition this time. David takes his position. His heart hammers. This is it. The moment he has been anticipating and dreading. The ship will fire the Mark 8 shells, the shells designed to penetrate enemy battleship armor. Shells that could penetrate this turret. The first shell rises on the hoist, not painted orange, gray steel, armor-piercing cap on the nose, polished body gleaming under the red lights. David touches it as it passes. The metal is cool, smooth, precisely machined. Somewhere inside this shell is the mathematics he calculated in his boarding house room. The kinetic energy, the penetration potential, the fatal equation. The shell continues upward, into the gunroom. The rammer pushes it into the breech. The powder hoist delivers 6 bags. Rammer loads them. Breech closes, locks. The gun is ready. David hears the fire control officer's voice over the intercom. Distant, mechanical. Turret 2, range 20,000, bearing 175. Commence firing. Porter's voice, calm, steady. Stand clear, firing. The warning bell rings, then the world ends. The sound is beyond description. Not a bang, not an explosion. A physical force that hits David in the chest like a sledgehammer. The entire turret shudders. Deck plates jump. Rivets sing. The gun recoils 4 feet. Hydraulic buffers absorb thousands of tons of force. The breech slides backward. Stops. Returns to battery. Smoke fills the turret despite the ventilation fans running at maximum. Cordite smell. Bitter. Chemical. It burns the throat. David's ears ring. Every man in the turret is shouting, but he cannot hear them. Just the high-pitched whine of damaged hearing. Porter is already calling for the next round. The drill continues. Load, fire, extract, load, fire. After 10 rounds, Porter calls ceasefire. The turret falls silent. Relatively. The ventilation fans still roar. Hydraulics still hiss. But no more gunfire. David's hands shake. He grips the rail to steady them. Porter walks the shell deck, checking equipment, checking men. He stops at David's station. First time is always hard, Brennan. Gets easier. David nods. Cannot speak yet. Porter leans closer, lowers his voice. You did good. Stayed focused. Some men freeze up. You kept working. Thank you, Chief. Porter studies him. You look worried. Something bothering you. David hesitates. This is the moment. He could tell Porter about the calculations, about the shell weight, about the armor inadequacy. Porter is experienced. Smart. He might listen. But what would happen then? Porter would report it up the chain of command. Officers would investigate. Find out David was questioning Navy specifications. At best, transfer him off the ship. At worst, court-martial for spreading defeatist rumors during wartime. And nothing would change. The armor would still be 12.1 inches. The shells would still be 2,700 pounds. The vulnerability would still exist. Just nervous, Chief? First time shooting? Porter nods, pats his shoulder. It is a hell of a weapon, but remember, this turret is protected by 19.7 inches of armor. Nothing the Japs have can touch us. He walks on. David stands alone on the shell deck. 19.7 inches of armor. The same armor that cannot stop the shell David just helped load. Porter is wrong. The Japanese might not be able to touch them, but the Americans can, and that terrifies David more than any enemy. September 1944. USS Iowa has been in the Pacific for 2 months, operating with Task Force 38, fast carrier raids against Japanese positions. Philippines, Formosa. The ship has not faced enemy surface units. The war is moving toward its climax. MacArthur is returning to the Philippines. The Navy is preparing for the largest naval operation in history. David has settled into the routine. Watches, drills, maintenance. The turret crew has become proficient. They can sustain 2 rounds per minute per gun, 6 shells every 60 seconds. Devastating firepower. But they have not fired at another ship. Only shore bombardment, Japanese installations, concrete bunkers, supply depots. The 16-inch shells obliterate everything they hit. David watches from the shell deck, feels the turret shudder with each shot, knows these shells could destroy this turret just as easily as they destroy enemy fortifications. The knowledge haunts him. September 20, 19 The ship is at Ulithi Atoll. Refueling, resupply. Admiral Halsey is planning the next operation. Division officers call assembly for senior petty officers and selected junior personnel. David is included. Porter recommended him. Smart kid, good with numbers, might make petty officer someday. The briefing is in the wardroom, 30 men packed into a space designed for 20. An intelligence officer stands at the front, Lieutenant Commander Harrison. Not related to any metallurgist, just another officer with bad news. Harrison pins a photograph to the board. Grainy. Aerial reconnaissance. A massive ship at anchor. Gentlemen, this is the reason for today's briefing. Intelligence has confirmed Japan has deployed a super battleship. Codename Yamato. Displacement estimated at 70,000 tons. Over 20,000 tons, heavier than Iowa. Murmurs run through the assembled men. Harrison continues. Main battery is unknown. Best estimates suggest 18-inch guns, possibly larger. Armor thickness is unknown, but presumed to be substantially heavier than any American or British battleship. David feels his stomach tighten. 18-inch guns. 18-inch shells would weigh. What? 3,200 pounds, 3,500 against 12.1 inches of armor. Porter raises his hand. Sir, if we encounter this vessel, what are our orders? Harrison exchanges a glance with the ship's executive officer. The XO nods. If contact is made with Yamato-class units, all American battleships are to maintain maximum effective range. Use radar fire control advantage. Do not close under any circumstances. The room is silent. Porter presses. Sir, why the restriction? Iowa has superior speed. We could maneuver for advantage. The XO steps forward. Commander James Sullivan, 40 years old, veteran of the Solomons campaign. The restriction exists for tactical reasons that are classified. You will follow orders. If the captain orders maximum range, you will maintain maximum range. Clear? Yes, sir. But it is not clear, not to anyone in the room. Why would the Navy order its newest, fastest battleships to avoid closing range with an enemy capital ship? David knows why. After the briefing, he lingers, pretends to study the photographs still pinned to the board. The XO notices. Something on your mind, Seaman? David straightens. No, sir. Just trying to understand the ship's profile for target recognition. Sullivan studies him. You are Brennan, right? Gun captain says you are sharp with calculations. I try, sir. You worked in a steel plant before enlisting. Bethlehem, armor production. David's pulse quickens. How does the XO know this? Why would he care? Yes, sir. Quality inspection. Sullivan nods slowly. Then you understand metallurgy. You understand what armor can and cannot do. It is not a question. David chooses his words carefully. I understand armor has limitations, sir. Good. Then you understand why we maintain range. Sullivan's voice drops. You also understand we do not discuss those limitations with the crew. Morale matters. Confidence matters. The men need to believe this ship is invulnerable. Even if it is not, Sullivan meets his eyes, especially if it is not, because confidence keeps men alive. Hesitation kills, fear kills. If the crew knows the armor has vulnerabilities, they hesitate, they doubt, they make mistakes. But sir, if they knew the truth, they could. What Brennan build thicker armor. We are at sea. The armor is what it is. Knowing the truth changes nothing except their state of mind. Sullivan steps closer. I know you are smart. I know you have probably done the calculations. But let me be clear. You will not share those calculations with anyone. You will not discuss armor vulnerabilities. You will not spread doubt. Understood? Sir, I was not. Understood, David swallows. Understood, sir. Sullivan's expression softens slightly. Good man, dismissed. David leaves the wardroom. His mind races. The XO knows, not just about armor limitations in general. He knows David knows. How? Unless someone at Bethlehem Steel reported David's questions to the Navy, unless his letter to the Bureau of Construction, the one he never sent, somehow got flagged anyway, unless the Navy has been tracking him since he enlisted. David walks to his berthing compartment, climbs into his rack, lies in the darkness. The ship knows he knows. The officers know he knows. But the crew cannot know, because knowing would break their confidence. And confidence is the only armor that matters when the steel is inadequate. David understands the logic, hates it, but understands it. Men fight better when they believe they are protected, even when they are not. October 24th, 1944. The ship is part of Task Force 34, covering the carriers during the invasion of Leyte Gulf, the largest naval operation of the Pacific War. Over 200 American ships, 30 Japanese capital ships approaching from multiple directions. Intelligence reports are fragmentary, confusing. Japanese forces divided into three groups: Center Force, Southern Force, Northern Force. Admiral Halsey commands the American response. His orders are aggressive: find the enemy carriers, destroy them. But the Japanese Center Force includes battleships, heavy cruisers, destroyers, and possibly Yamato. October 25th, 0300 hours. General quarters sounds. David rolls out of his rack, pulls on clothes, grabs his helmet and life jacket, runs to his station. Turret 2 comes alive. Lights switch to red. Ventilation fans roar. Hydraulics pressurize. Men take positions. 110 men, each knowing his job, each trusting the others to do theirs. Porter's voice over the intercom. All stations report readiness. The reports come in. Gunroom ready, shell deck ready, powder flat ready, magazines ready. David locks his station, checks the hoist mechanisms. Everything green. Shell deck 2 ready. The turret is ready, but David is not. His hands tremble. He grips the rail, forces himself to breathe slowly. This could be it. The moment he has feared since he calculated penetration tables in a boarding house room 2 years ago. The bridge intercom crackles. Surface contacts, bearing 270, range 8,000 yards. Multiple heavy units, closing, 38,000 yards. 21 miles, safe range. For now. The fire control radar locks targets. The turret begins to rotate, hydraulics whining. The massive barbette turning, bringing guns to bear. David feels the rotation through the deck plates. The entire structure moving as one piece. 17.3 inches of armor. Batch 147 plates. Micro cracks in the cementation layer. Turning toward enemy battleships. The range closes. 38,000, 36,000, 34,000. Porter's voice. Calm. Stand by all guns. We will engage on command. David positions himself at the shell hoist, ready to guide the first round up. 2,000 yards. The mathematics run through David's head. Automatic, unstoppable. At 32,000 yards, shell flight time is 40 seconds. Impact angle steep. Deck armor vulnerable. Belt armor probably safe. 30,000 yards. Still relatively safe, but getting closer to the danger zone. Then a different voice on the intercom. Not fire control. The captain. Turret 2, standby fire mission. We are tracking multiple targets. Largest target designated contact Alpha. Possibly Yamato class. David's breath catches. Yamato. Here. Now. The range continues to close. 28,000. 26,000. Fire control officer. Solution locked on contact Alpha. Range 25,800 yards. 25,000 yards. The edge of the danger zone. At 25,000, Yamato's 18-inch guns could penetrate Iowa's armor. Probably. The math is uncertain because no one knows exactly how heavy Yamato's shells are, or what the muzzle velocity is. But David knows his own ship's capabilities exactly. At 25,000 yards, Iowa's 16-inch Mark 8 shells can penetrate Iowa's 12.1-inch belt armor. Not definitely. Not every shot, angle matters, shell condition matters, but it is possible. And below 25,000, it becomes probable. The turret is trained, elevated, loaded, ready, waiting for the fire command. David stands at his station, hands on the rail, watching the shell waiting in the hoist. If the captain orders fire, David will send that shell up. The gun will fire. The shell will arc across 25,000 yards of ocean and strike. Something. Hopefully Yamato. Hopefully with enough force to penetrate and damage. And Yamato will return fire. 18-inch shells, 3,000 pounds or more, falling from the sky. Some will miss, most will miss. Naval gunnery is not precise even with radar. But one hit, one shell striking this turret barbette, one penetration through batch 147 plates, and everyone in this turret dies. The magazines below detonate. The explosion destroys the entire forward section of the ship. Iowa sinks in minutes. 1,800 men. Gone. The intercom crackles. David tenses. This is it. But the voice is not the fire control officer. It is Admiral's staff. Task Force Command. All battleship units. New orders. Do not engage, Center Force. Repeat. Do not engage. Maintain screening position with carriers. Center Force is withdrawing. Northern Force carriers are primary target. Come to course 045. Increase speed to 28 knots. Silence in the turret. Then Porter's voice. Confused. Frustrated. Secure from fire mission. Stand down. The guns elevate to neutral position. The turret rotates back to center line. The range to contact Alpha begins to open. 26,000, 28,000, 30,000. Iowa turns north, chasing the Japanese carrier force, leaving the battleships behind. David exhales slowly. They are not engaging. The Admiral ordered them away. Contact Alpha, possibly Yamato, is withdrawing into San Bernardino Strait. Iowa is steaming north. The battle they almost fought will not happen. Around David, the other men are talking, complaining. Why did not we fire? We had them. First time we get a shot at a Jap battleship and they call it off. Porter tried to calm them. Orders are orders. The Admiral has the big picture. We do not. But David knows the big picture. The Admiral saved them. Not because of tactics, not because carriers were more important, because closing to gun range with Yamato was suicide. And someone high up the chain of command knew it. David sits on the deck, legs suddenly weak. His hands are still shaking, not from fear of what happened, from relief at what did not happen. Aboard battleship Yamato, October 25, 1944. Earth 4:30 hours. Vice Admiral Takeo Kurita stands on the bridge. His center force has been under air attack for 36 hours. He has lost multiple ships, hundreds of men. Now American battleships are on the horizon. Kurita raises binoculars, studies the distant silhouettes. 4 ships, Iowa class, possibly more behind them. His intelligence officer reports. Range 32,000 meters, Admiral. They are maintaining distance. Kurita lowers the binoculars, considers. Yamato carries 9 18-inch guns, Type 94 armor-piercing shells. Each shell weighs 3,200 pounds. At maximum elevation range is 45,000 meters. But accuracy at extreme range is poor. Optical fire control only. Rangefinders are excellent, but not perfect. The Americans have radar. They can fire accurately in darkness, in rain, in conditions where Japanese gunners cannot see the target. If Kurita closes range, he gives up that advantage. But if he maintains range, the American speed advantage means they can dictate the engagement. Iowa class can make 33 knots. Yamato maxes at 27. The Americans can circle, maneuver, fire from optimal angles, withdraw if damaged. Admiral, the Americans are turning away. Course change to northeast. Speed increasing. Kurita watches through binoculars. The American battleships are indeed turning, not closing, not engaging. Why are they not attacking? His chief of staff asks. Kurita considers. They are protecting carriers. Carriers are their priority, or, he does not finish the thought, or they know something about Yamato's capabilities and choose not to engage. American intelligence is good. Possibly they know about the 18-inch guns, about the heavy armor, about Yamato's advantage in close-range slugging match. Admiral, your orders. Kurita is exhausted. His force has been mauled by air attacks. Multiple ships damaged. Men are at their limits, and the Americans are withdrawing. Come to course 250. Reduce speed to 18 knots. We will transit San Bernardino Strait as planned. The staff officer hesitates. Sir, the invasion fleet is vulnerable. If we push through to Leyte Gulf, the American carriers will destroy us. We have no air cover. They have hundreds of aircraft. We continue as ordered, but we do not pursue their battleships. Yamato turns west, away from Iowa. The battle that might have been the largest surface engagement since Jutland does not happen. Kurita does not know he is steaming away from battleships that cannot reliably stop his shells. Iowa's crew does not know they were facing guns that would have penetrated their armor at any practical range. Both sides withdraw. Both sides believing they made the correct tactical decision. Both sides correct. Aboard Iowa, the crew secures from battle stations at 0600. David climbs out of turret 2, emerges onto the main deck. Dawn is breaking. The sky is gray and pink. The ocean is calm. Other men from the turret crew gather at the rail, smoking, talking. Damn shame we did not get a shot. Next time. My buddy on New Jersey says their turrets were trained and ready too. Whole battle line ready to go, and the admiral calls it off. David says nothing, leans on the rail, watches the sun rise. Porter appears beside him, lights a cigarette, offers one to David. David does not smoke, but takes it anyway. Porter lights it for him. They stand in silence. Finally, Porter speaks. You know something the rest of them do not know. It is not a question. David takes a drag from the cigarette, coughs. Chief, I have been watching you. During drills, during that approach this morning, you were scared. Not normal scared. Scared like you knew something. David does not answer. Porter continues. I was on Pennsylvania at Pearl Harbor. I know what happens when armor fails. I saw Arizona blow up, magazine explosion, whole ship gone in seconds, 1,100 men. He pauses. But I also know Arizona was hit by bombs, plunging fire, through the deck, armor. Not the belt. Yes, Chief. Belt armor is what protects against shells, horizontal fire, ship to ship, and Iowa's belt is the best there is. David looks at Porter. The Chief's face is weathered, experienced, trustworthy. Is it, Chief? Porter meets his eyes. Long moment. It is what we have, Brennan. It is what we go to war with, and it will have to be enough. David nods slowly. Porter is right, in a way that has nothing to do with mathematics. The armor is 12.1 inches. It cannot stop Mark 8 shells at close range. It probably cannot stop Yamato's 18-inch shells at any range. But it is what they have, and worrying about what it cannot do will not change what it can do. You are right, Chief. Porter claps his shoulder. Get some rest. We will be back at battle stations before noon. The Japs are not done yet. David returns to his berthing compartment, climbs into his rack, pulls out his notebook, writes 25 October 1944, contact with possible Yamato class, range closed to 25,800 yards. Did not engage. Admiral ordered withdrawal to pursue northern force. We were saved by orders we did not understand. The armor was never tested. Maybe it would have held. Maybe not. We will never know. He closes the notebook, slides it under his mattress. That night, David writes a letter to his father. The letter is short. Censors will read it anyway. Cannot say much. Dad, we are okay. Saw some action. Did not fire. The armor is holding up fine. I think about you every day, about the plates we made together. They are doing their job. I trust them. Love, David. It is not entirely true. David does not fully trust the armor, but he trusts the men around him. Trusts Porter, trusts the captain, trusts the admiral who ordered them to maintain distance. Sometimes trust in people matters more than trust in steel. The war continues. Iowa serves through the rest of the Philippines campaign. Iwo Jima, Okinawa, shore bombardment, anti-aircraft defense, carrier escort. The ship never faces another enemy battleship. The armor is never tested against the threat David calculated 2 years earlier. In August 1945, Japan surrenders. David musters out in 1946, returns to Lackawanna, returns to Bethlehem Steel. The armor did its work, not because it was perfect, because it never had to be. April 19, 1989, 43 years after David Brennan mustered out of the Navy. USS Iowa is at sea again. The ship was mothballed in 1958, sat in reserve for 26 years. Then President Reagan's administration reactivated all 4 Iowa-class battleships as part of the 600-ship Navy initiative. Iowa was recommissioned in 1980 for modernized with Tomahawk cruise missiles, Harpoon anti-ship missiles, Phalanx close-in weapon systems for missile defense, but the 16-inch guns remain, still operational, still deadly, and Turret 2 is still equipped but with the same barbette armor installed in 1941. Batch 147 plates, 48 years old now. The microcracks David observed in 1942 are still there. Deeper now, stress cracks radiating from the original flaws. The metallurgy has not changed. Steel does not improve with age. The new crew knows nothing of this history. Gunner's mate second class Robert Hayes is 24 years old. He was born in 1965. David Brennan was already working at Bethlehem Steel for 19 years by then, building armor for aircraft carriers instead of battleships. Hayes is gun captain for Turret 2 center gun. Smart kid, quick, confident. He has never been in combat. The Cold War is winding down. Soviet Union is collapsing. The chances of Iowa ever fighting another battleship are zero. But the guns still need training. The crew still needs to maintain proficiency. April 19th, training exercise in the Caribbean. Beautiful day, blue sky, calm seas. The exercise is routine. Load and fire drill. No live ammunition against targets. Just practicing the mechanical ballet of moving shells and powder. Hayes is in the gunroom, center gun, watching his crew stage the powder bags. 6 bags, each containing 110 pounds of smokeless powder. Silk bags, delicate, dangerous. The powder is old. Some of it dates from World War II. The same powder David helped load in 1944. Stored properly, still functional, but old chemicals are unstable. Hayes notices a smell. Chemical. Wrong. He has smelled powder before. This is different, sharper, more acrid. Hold, Hayes says. Something is not right. His senior loader notices it too. Chief, I smell it. The powder. Hayes moves toward the powder staging area, trying to identify the source. The center gun breech is open, ready to receive the shell and powder. The powder bags are stacked, ready to load. Hayes reaches toward the top bag, checking for leaks, for deterioration. His hand is 6 inches away when the band ignites. No warning, no time to react. One instant stability, next instant hell. The powder detonates, not just the one bag, all 6. Simultaneous ignition, 660 pounds of explosive burning at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit in a confined space. The explosion fills the gunroom in a microsecond. Fireball, pressure wave, superheated gas. Hayes dies instantly. So does every other man in the gunroom. The blast travels down through the turret, through the shell decks, through the powder handling rooms. Men are thrown against bulkheads. Equipment shatters. Lights explode. 47 men are in turret 2 at the moment of detonation. All 47 die within seconds. The armor holds. This is critical. The 17.3-inch barbette does not fail. The face-hardened plates withstand the internal pressure. The blast does not penetrate to the magazines below. If the magazines had detonated, the explosion would have destroyed the forward third of the ship. Iowa would have sunk, but the armor contains the catastrophe. Batch 147 plates, 48 years old, micro cracks and all. They do exactly what they were designed to do. They keep the explosion inside. But they cannot protect the men who were already inside. Every man in Turret 2 is dead. The worst peacetime disaster in the history of the United States Navy since 1944. Emergency klaxons sound throughout the ship. Damage control teams respond. Firefighting crews battle the blaze inside the turret. It takes 4 hours to put out all the fires. It takes 6 hours to recover all the bodies. The investigation begins immediately. The Navy forms a formal investigation board. Rear Admiral Richard Milligan presiding. Experts in explosives, metallurgy, naval ordnance, criminal investigators. Their mission determine cause, assign responsibility, prevent future incidents. The investigation takes months. Experts examine the turret wreckage, the powder bags, the mechanical systems, everything. They interview survivors, officers, crew members who were not in the turret, anyone who might have information, and they examine the armor. This is standard procedure. Any catastrophic failure requires structural analysis. Did the armor contribute to the disaster? Did it fail in any way? Metallurgists section the barbette plates, cut samples, examine under microscopes. They find the micro cracks, old cracks, decades old, radiating from the cementation boundary exactly where David observed them in 1942. The metallurgist writes in his report, Barbette plate 147B exhibits micro-cracking consistent with stress concentration at the case-hardened interface. Cracks appear to date from original manufacture. Plate met in the 1940s specifications, but represents marginal quality by modern standards. Another investigator asked the obvious question: did these cracks contribute to the explosion? No, the explosion originated from powder mishandling. The cracks are structural concerns, but did not cause or worsen the disaster. The armor performed as designed. It contained the blast. But the finding triggers another question. If the cracks date from our original manufacture, was the Navy aware of them? Investigators begin searching construction records. New York Navy Yard, 1941. Box after box of paperwork. Inspection reports. Quality certifications. Contractor correspondence. Deep in the archive, an investigator finds a sealed envelope. The envelope is labeled "Open only in event of armor failure investigation." Brennan, February 1941. The investigator opens it. Inside is a letter, handwritten, faded but legible. Tommy Brennan's confession. To whom it may concern, I certified plate batch 147 for installation in USS Iowa Barbette structure, knowing the plates exhibited minor quality defects. Micro cracks at the cementation boundary were observed during inspection. The plates met all Navy specifications but were marginal. I approved them under production schedule pressure. If these plates fail in service, the responsibility is mine, not the company's, not the other inspectors. I knew. Thomas Brennan Forge, Supervisor, Bethlehem Steel Corporation. The investigator reads the letter twice, then notices a second note, smaller, clipped to the letter. See also calculations by David Brennan, November 1942 to June 1943, regarding armor adequacy against Mark 8 shells. The investigator's pulse quickens. Who is David Brennan? More searching, more records, personnel files, USS Iowa crew rosters, 1943 to 1946. Seaman David Brennan, Turret Division 2, enlisted February 1943, discharged November 1946. Current address on file from Veterans Benefits, 847 Mariner Street, Buffalo, New York. The investigator makes a phone call. The phone rings 4 times. Then a man answers, voice older, tired. Hello, is this David Brennan, served on USS Iowa during World War II? Pause. Yes, who is calling? Sir, this is Lieutenant Commander James Morrison, Naval Investigative Service. I am working on the Turret 2 explosion investigation. Your name came up in connection with historical armor inspection records. I need to ask you some questions. Longer pause. I see. What do you want to know? Sir, did you document concerns about Iowa-class armor specifications between 1942 and 1943? Yes. Do you still have those documents? David Brennan is 64 years old, retired from Bethlehem Steel in 1987, lives alone in a small house in Buffalo. His father, Tommy, had died 2 months earlier. February 1989, age 89. Tommy never knew about the Turret 2 explosion. Never knew whether his plates would hold under catastrophic stress. He died 2 months before the disaster that would finally test batch 147. He died carrying the same burden of doubt David had carried for 47 years. David has no children, few friends, keeps to himself. He goes to the basement, opens an old metal filing cabinet, pulls out a notebook. The same notebook he kept during the war. Pages yellowed, binding cracked. But the writing is still clear. He brings it upstairs, looks at it for a long moment. His father will never know the answer, but David can give it to the Navy. Then says into the phone, yes, I still have them. 2 days later, Lieutenant Commander Morrison arrives in Buffalo. David invites him inside, offers coffee. They sit at the kitchen table, the same table where Tommy taught David about armor specifications 48 years ago. Morrison is young, maybe 35, professional, polite. Mr. Brennan, thank you for meeting with me. I understand this may be difficult. I am sorry for your recent loss. David nods. My father died in February. He never knew about the explosion. I see. That must be. He carried doubts about those plates for 48 years. Never knew if they would hold. David pushes the notebook across the table. Now we know. You want to see this. Morrison opens it carefully. Page 1, November 14th, 1942. Plate 147B. Micro cracks at cementation boundary. Page 12, December 1942. Mark 8 shell weight, 2,700 milliamps. Penetration estimates at various ranges. Armor inadequate below 25,000 yards. Page 23. Detailed calculations. Shell velocities. Impact angles. Armor resistance formulas. Page 34. October 25, 1944. Contact with a possible Yamato class. Range 25,800 yards. Did not engage. We were saved. Morrison reads in silence. Turns pages slowly. His expression does not change, but David can see the recognition dawning. Finally, Morrison closes the notebook. Mr. Brennan, you were 17 years old when you wrote this. Yes. You calculated that Iowa's armor could not stop the ship's own shells at battle range. Yes. Did you report this to anyone? I tried. My supervisor at Bethlehem Steel dismissed it. I wrote a letter to the Bureau of Construction and Repair, but never sent it. My father convinced me it would accomplish nothing except get us both fired. What about when you enlisted? Did you tell Navy officers, I tried once, on the ship. After an intelligence briefing about Yamato, the executive officer told me to keep quiet, said the crew needed to believe the armor was invulnerable even if it was not. Morrison makes notes. And during the war you served in turret 2, the same turret protected by the plates you had inspected. Yes, I thought about it every day, every time we went to battle stations, wondering if this would be the time we faced an enemy battleship at close range. But it never happened. No, we came close at Leyte Gulf, but the Admiral ordered us to maintain distance. We never engaged Japanese surface units at the ranges where the armor would have been vulnerable. Morrison taps the notebook. Mr. Brennan, were your calculations correct? David meets his eyes. Yes, declassified test reports from 1942 confirm it. The Navy knew the armor could not stop Mark 8 shells below 25,000 yards. They proceeded with construction anyway because speed was judged more important than maximum protection. And the microcracks in plate 147B, those were real. I observed them. My father knew about them. He certified the plates anyway because they met specifications and production could not afford delays. Did those cracks cause the turret 2 explosion? No, David's voice is firm. The explosion was powder handling, nothing to do with armor. But if you are asking whether the plates would have failed under enemy fire in 1904, I cannot answer that. We were never tested. Morrison is quiet for a moment. Then, Mr. Brennan, the armor held in April. The barbette contained the explosion. If those plates had failed, the entire ship might have been lost. David's eyes closed briefly. My father died not knowing that. I am sorry. So am I. David opens his eyes. But at least I can tell him now, at his grave, that he was right. The steel was good enough. Morrison closes his notebook, sits back. Mr. Brennan, you understand what this means. You identified a critical vulnerability in America's most modern battleships. At 17 years old, using basic mathematics, and the Navy ignored you. The Navy did not ignore me. They knew. The designers knew. The metallurgists knew. They made a calculated decision. Accept the vulnerability. Gain the speed. Use tactics to avoid situations where the vulnerability mattered. But the crews did not know. No, the crews did not know. David's voice softens. And maybe that was right. What would have changed if we knew? We would have been terrified every time we faced enemy ships. We would have hesitated, doubted. That doubt could have gotten us killed faster than any armor failure. Morrison stands, extends his hand. Thank you for your time, sir. Your testimony will be included in the final report. They shake hands. Morrison pauses at the door. Sir, one more question. Do you regret not pushing harder? Not forcing the Navy to listen? David considers. No, I was 17. I did what I could. I documented the truth. I tried to warn people. But I was not responsible for building the ships or fighting the war. I did my job. Loaded shells, followed orders, came home. That is all any of us could do. Morrison nods, leaves. David sits at the kitchen table, alone looking at the notebook. 47 years of carrying this knowledge. Now finally someone else knows. someone who can put it in the official record. The truth will be documented, but it will not change anything. The ships are being decommissioned anyway. The Cold War is ending. Iowa will be mothballed again. Probably permanently this time. For 48 years, the armor did its work. Imperfect, vulnerable, marginal, but sufficient. The Navy investigation concludes in October 1989. Official finding, turret 2 explosion caused by deteriorated powder. Improper handling procedures. The armor is noted to have performed correctly. Barbette containment prevented magazine detonation and total loss of ship. A classified appendix confirms what David calculated at 17 Iowa-class armor was vulnerable to Mark 8 shells below 25,000 yards. The Navy knew, accepted the risk, built the ships anyway. The appendix remains classified until 2009. USS Iowa is decommissioned October 26, 1990. Turret 2 sealed. Memorial plaque lists 47 names. David Brennan dies December 2012, age 87. His obituary in the Buffalo News is 3 paragraphs. No mention of the notebook. No mention that he was 17 when he discovered what admirals already knew. His father never learned the truth. Tommy Brennan died in February 1989, 2 months before the explosion. In his last days bedridden fading, he told David, "I did my best with what I knew. The steel was good. I have to believe it was good enough." David sat by his father's bed, held his hand. "It was Dad. I promise you it was. You do not know that. We were never tested. I know the steel. I know the work you did. It was good enough." Tommy died believing his son's promise. 2 months later, when 47 men died, but the ship survived, the promise became truth. But Tommy never knew. David visited the grave in May 1989, after Morrison's interview. After learning Batch 147 had done exactly what it was designed to do. Simple granite headstone, Thomas Brennan, 1900 to 1989. "You were right, Dad," David said to the stone. "The armor did its job. Batch 147 held. It saved the ship." The grave gave no answer. But David felt something lift. A weight carried since November 1942. His father had made good steel. Imperfect steel, but good enough. Today, museum ship Iowa sits at berth 87 Los Angeles Harbor. A small exhibit includes David's notebook. Open to page 12. The penetration calculations. Most visitors walk past without noticing, but some stop. Read the placard. Study the careful handwriting of a 17-year-old factory worker who did the math no one wanted to hear. October 25, 1944. Pacific Ocean. Range 25,800 yards. 19-year-old David Brennan stood in Turret 2, Japanese super battleship on the horizon. Admiral ordered do not engage. The crew thought it was tactics. David knew it was survival. A 17-year-old machinist apprentice had calculated what the Navy already knew, but could not change. His simple observation, heavier shells penetrate thinner armor. The expert's answer, build the ships anyway. Use speed. Use tactics. Accept the risk. Both were right. The armor that could not save itself saved the ship. The vulnerability that terrified a teenage apprentice never mattered in combat, because sometimes being right matters less than being ready, and sometimes imperfect armor is good enough. His name was David Brennan. He was 17 years old, and he was right.